All right, let's go ahead and get started. Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining our lightning session. My name is Sarah Strigley. I'm with the Population Reference Bureau. We're going to have a lightning session this round, so we have several presenters. Each of the 7 presentations will be about 7 minutes long. And so we're going to save questions for the end, like we've done in other sessions. If you could please put your questions in the Q&A. At the end, I'll go through the questions, read them to panelists, and give them an opportunity to answer your questions. Panelists, you can also keep an eye on the questions in the Q&A throughout as well when you're not presenting, if you'd like to do that as well. And we'll go over them at the end. So, like I said, we've got a lot of presentations. We'll just go ahead and get started. We're going to begin with Eric Hernandez. Eric, you can go ahead and share your screen.
All right, can everyone see my presentation?
Yes.
Is that yes?
That's a yes.
Excellent. All right. Hello, and thank you for coming to my presentation. I will be presenting our research on the changing landscape of languages spoken in the United States. And this includes a geographic analysis of select languages spoken in 2006 to 2010 to 2017 to 2021. The types of non-English languages present in the United States has changed over the years, largely based on the immigrant groups that moved here. The immigrants to the US in the late 1800s and 1900s were primarily from Europe, followed by a halt in migration from 1930 to 1970. This resulted in a fading of linguistic diversity, which was then revived in the 1970s with the immigration primarily from Latin America and Asia. And these changing migration patterns and linguistic diversity have resulted in 22% of the US population speaking a language other than English, and 78% of the population speaking English only. Using the 2017 to 2021 data from the American Community Survey, Spanish was the most widely spoken language other than English, followed by Chinese, French, and Tagalog. Our previous research, utilizing earlier data, found that between 2006 to 2010 and 2015 to 2019, Arabic was the fastest growing language in the top 10 languages spoken in the later period, and German was the fastest declining language. So the current study seeks to answer 3 questions. How much has the population of persons who spoke a language other than English changed over the last decade? How much does population change vary for select non-English languages during this time period? And how has the population of non-English speakers changed among states? To answer these questions, we use 2 5-year files of the ACS, 2006 to 2010 and 2017 to 2021. We limit our analysis to the population aged 5 years and older, and we provide descriptive statistics and state-level analysis on people who spoke a language other than English and for specific non-English languages. Among the top 10 languages other than English spoken at home in 2017 to 2021, there were over 41 million Spanish speakers in the US, which is approximately 13% of the US population. And there were as well nearly 3.5 million Chinese speakers. And the table here shows that there were an additional 5 languages with over 1 million speakers each. Now, between 2006 to 2010 and 2017 to 2021, the total population of speakers of languages other than English, labeled here on the figure as LOTE, increased by 17.7%. And among the top 10 languages in the 2017 to 2021 period, 8 out of 10 showed an increase in the number of speakers, with Arabic speakers increasing the most by over 70%. Meanwhile, 2 languages experienced declines, with the greatest among German speakers by over 21%. To provide some descriptive statistics about within these populations, this figure presents changes in nativity distribution for the US population for speakers of languages other than English, as well as Spanish, Chinese, Arabic, and German. Here, nativity is split into 3 categories: native born in the light red, naturalized citizen in the dark blue, and not a citizen in light blue. The stars between the bars indicate a statistically significant change between 2006 to 2010 and 2017 to 2021 for each group. Now, all examined groups experienced statistically significant change between the 2 time periods, with the exception of Arabic speakers who are native born being not statistically significant. And while the US population experienced a decrease in percent native born, LOTE, Spanish, Chinese, and German speakers had greater percentages of native-born in 2017 to 2021. Additionally, the U.S. population, Lot, Spanish, and Arabic speakers experienced an increase in the percent of naturalized citizens, and nearly every group experienced a decline in the percent of not a citizen. In looking at the foreign-born population by the 4 specific languages, we find that in both periods, foreign-born German speakers had lived longer in the U.S. than foreign-born speakers of the other 3 languages. And this aligns with the changing migration patterns of the U.S., with immigrants from Europe arriving the earliest. And when looking at the age of entry into the U.S., German speakers were older than speakers of the 3 selected languages in 2006 to 2010. Meanwhile, in 2017 to 2021, German speakers continued to be older than Spanish and Arabic speakers, but they were actually younger than Chinese speakers. Moving to our state-level analysis, which also includes the District of Columbia, we first provide a summary of changes for each non-English language spoken. 44 geographies experienced an increase in the population of speakers of languages other than English between 2006 to 2010 and 2017 to 2021. Meanwhile, 4 experienced declines in the other than English-speaking population, and 3 experienced no statistical difference between the 2 periods. Meanwhile, the population of Spanish speakers increased across 43 geographies, the most of any of the selected languages, followed by Chinese and Arabic. Meanwhile, German speakers did not increase for any geography, but instead declined in 40 states. And additionally, while we found Arabic speakers to have the greatest increase nationally, this growth was actually concentrated in the fewest states of 38, as well as the most states that showed no statistically significant change. We designed maps presenting the percentage change for each language group. And due to time, I will talk about 2 languages, but have others available in the appendix. For Arabic speakers, the percentage change ranged between no change and an increase of 534%, which was in Idaho. And the greatest increases are in specific states throughout the U.S., such as Idaho, Texas, Washington, and Kentucky. For German speakers, the percentage change ranged between declines of 52% in South Dakota and up to no change. And the greatest declines are grouped in the upper Midwest, as well as New Jersey and Delaware. So to summarize our findings, the number of persons who spoke a language other than English grew 17.7% between 2006 to 2010 and 2017 to 2021. Meanwhile, 8 of the top 10 languages in the later period grew over the last decade. And among these groups, Arabic speakers had the greatest population increase, while German speakers had the greatest population decline. And finally, the proportion of Spanish speakers changed the most across state populations, with growth occurring in 43 states compared to the other 3 languages. And here's my contact information, as well as for my colleague, Sandy. We would be happy to answer any questions either in this presentation or in the future. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Eric. Next, we'll have Aldo Crosa and Lisa King.
Can everyone see this?
We can.
Okay, great. Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us today. My name is Liza King, and this is Aldo Crosa, and we are happy to present our work in disaggregating ACS race and ethnicity data for 2 specific populations, Asian and Pacific Islanders in New York City and the indigenous people of the Americas living in New York City. Our work was actually done in 2 separate projects and for 2 different reports. And so I'm going to start by presenting our work on the Asian and Pacific Islander population, and then Aldo will go next. Okay, so the New York City Health Department regularly uses ACS data to characterize the population of the city and compare health inequities between different racial and ethnic groups. And this slide is simply showing the racial and ethnic makeup of New York City displayed in 5 categories. These 5 groups are the most common way that we show race and ethnicity data. However, these large groups can hide heterogeneity within groups or exclude presentation of smaller populations in data reporting. So the New York City Health Department developed 2 reports that were both released in 2021. One detailing the health of Asian Pacific Islander, or API, New Yorkers, and one detailing the health of Indigenous Peoples of the America, or IPOA. In both reports, ACS data were obtained and analyzed using IPUMS to characterize social determinants of health among these groups. We used 5-year estimates from 2013 to 2017 to improve statistical reliability, and this was very important for the disaggregation of the small groups. Additional data from health surveys and vital statistics records were also analyzed as part of these reports. In order to ensure that the data in these reports represented the communities in the way in which they wanted to be seen, we consulted with a number of community partners. For the API report, we reached out to over 20 community partners serving API communities, and we asked them how best to define Asian and how we should present the different ancestry groups for the report. Based on their feedback, we included mixed race and mixed ethnicity APIs. We aim to disaggregate as many API ancestry groups as possible. And for underrepresented ancestries, we grouped them by region where possible. So here is a breakdown of the Native Hawaiian and Pacific Islanders and Asians in New York City. And on the left, I just wanted to show that the Native Hawaiian and Pacific Islander population has several ancestries, but they represent only 1% of the NYC API population. So unfortunately, we were unable to show this group by ancestry. However, we were able to present them as one group in the rest of the report. And there are approximately 1.2 million Asian New Yorkers. Chinese New Yorkers are the largest ancestry group, representing nearly half of the Asians in New York City, followed by people of Indian, Korean, Filipino, Bangladeshi, Pakistani, Japanese, and Vietnamese ancestry. And we were able to present data among all of these groups. There were also 12 ancestries that represented less than 1% of the NYC API population, and these underrepresented ancestries were grouped into 3 regions: South Asian, East Asian, and Southeast Asian. These are just the social determinants of health variables that were analyzed. And today, and for the sake of time, we're just going to show you a snapshot of poverty. So this figure shows the proportion of APIs who live below 200% of the federal poverty level does not differ from New York City overall. However, Bangladeshi, Pakistani, and Chinese ancestry groups all have higher rates of poverty compared with the citywide average. APIs have the highest income inequality of all racial and ethnic groups, and it is the visibility of APIs with high income that cause APIs with low income to become invisible. Despite these higher proportions, API New Yorkers who qualify for low-income services may be less likely to access the benefits available to them. And furthermore, structural bias informed by the model minority assumption may prevent API community organizations from receiving adequate funding. So we hope that this information continues to advocate that APIs are not a monolith and help people who are providing health services to APIs further understand and address their communities.
Thank you, Liza. So I'm briefly going to highlight some important points from our report on the health of Indigenous peoples of the Americas living in New York City.
We're getting some feedback. I don't know if you want to check your sound or mic.
Let me see. Can you hear me? Is that any better?
Still getting quite a bit of feedback.
I'm so sorry. Let me see.
I think this is better.
Yeah, I think that sounded better.
That's better? Okay. Sorry about that. Liza, can you go to the next slide? Okay. So contributors to this research report include people whose original lands are across the Americas with varied experiences of migration, resilience, and oppression. The initial work group discussions focused on the limitations of racialized data and the terminology used to classify Indigenous peoples of the Americas. Next slide. In particular, we talked about the terms Native American and American Indian, which are used in the ACS data collection, and we heard how problematic these terms are. Our co-authors expressed how they don't identify with the terms and the persistent collective trauma that these terms carry. Indeed, the ability to explicitly identify a particular tribe, nation, or culture was an important frustration for our co-authors whose ancestry is original to the Americas. I will note that in the 2020 census, there was a more inclusive question that hopefully might improve data collection among Indigenous people of the Americas. And in New York City, we updated the way we asked this question in our larger population health survey. So in addition to the inaccuracies around the language used for data collection, how we code data is also important. So here, as Liza showed at the beginning, New York City by convention, we report most of our health measures by composite measure of race and ethnicity. So we first identify whether somebody's Latino, and then we classify by race if they're not Latino, as you can see in this figure. But this report was on American Indian, Alaska Native, and so we put them first. And so we begin by classifying those who are American Indian, Alaska Native and check whether they're Latino, etc. And this carries some important implications. So for some context, in the 2010 census, there were approximately 100,000 people living in New York City identified as American Indian, Alaska Native alone, or in combination with other races or ethnicity. And if we had used the regular coding for race and ethnicity, meaning Latino first, we would have missed out about half of the population we wanted to describe in our report. So that's approximately 50,000 people. Of course, this likely only addresses a small limitation of data, but it's still something to consider in the data analysis phase. So the next, I'm going to present just some results from the report. So the collective, thank you, Liza. The collective and generational trauma of colonialism, compounded by structural racism and unjust global economic systems, are constantly trying to push these communities to the margins of our society. And it's clear when we look at some of the economic stressors like poverty, unemployment, and rent burden. So just in conclusion, our first, maybe and most important conclusion is that when it comes to reporting race, ethnicity, or ancestry data, it's important to try to engage the groups and members of these communities. This is not always doable, but should always be considered. Communicating this data with stakeholders is difficult and time-consuming, but it's crucial. And second, rethink any simplified categorization of race and ethnicity. Use the versatility of the American Community Survey to disaggregate simplified race categories. So finally, I just want to thank you all, and thank you to our colleagues Gia and Wendy, who helped us put this report and this presentation. We're going to answer any questions at the end. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa and Aldo. Next, I'll welcome Tiffany Kindra. Tiffany, if you'd like to go ahead and share your screen.
Okay, do you see my slides?
We do. Thank you.
Okay. When you see them, I can't see you. So, I'm Tiffany Kindrat. I'm assistant professor at the University of Texas at Arlington. This project looks at health insurance coverage among Middle Eastern and North African American children in the United States. And we used both the American Community Survey and the National Health Interview Survey to do this study. So just a little bit of an introduction here. National priorities have been set to reduce the number of children without health insurance in the United States. So the Health Resources and Services Administration has Title V, National Performance and Objective Measures, as well as Healthy People 2030 that set out goals to improve the number of children or increase the number of children with health insurance. Research has shown that Hispanic and Black children are more likely to be uninsured than white children in the United States. However, little is known about health insurance coverage among Middle Eastern and North African or MENA children. And this is because MENA children are classified as white by the Office of Management and Budget. This actually just went through a current comment period, and many of you may know that there is a proposal to add a separate checkbox for this group. Currently, this white group represents a heterogeneous group of individuals of any of the original peoples of Europe, the Middle East, or North Africa. However, research has showed that the health and lived experiences of individuals from the Middle East and North Africa region differ from white individuals of Anglo and European ancestry. And so we've done several research studies looking at foreign-born MENA adults. However, we haven't really looked a lot at foreign-born MENA children in the past. So this study is to calculate and compare estimates of foreign-born MENA children without health insurance compared to U.S. and foreign-born white children, and compare health insurance estimates among U.S. and foreign-born MENA children. This study also included looking at public and private health insurance estimates, but for purposes of time, they are not discussed today. So for our methods, we use 2000 to 2018 National Health Interview Survey data. This included 3,961 children. Of those, most of them were U.S.-born white children, over about 305,000. And then we had around 4,700 foreign-born white children. The National Health Interview Survey does not allow us to develop a MENA ancestry or MENA ethnicity. So the only way that we can do that with the National Health Interview Survey is by using the US and foreign-born question, looking at race and ethnicity, and then looking at specific region of birth. So we're not able to do that for the MENA category. And then there were 1,769 foreign-born MENA children in this survey. So as I just mentioned, we created that category using variables for race, ethnicity, and region of birth. Then for the American Community Survey, we were able to expand and actually create a variable describing US-born MENA individuals because of the ancestry question. And we had a much larger sample size, so we did not have to combine so many years of data. So the data that were used were 2015 to 2019, and it was close to 2 million children, most being US-born white, then 12,000 or so being foreign-born white, 25,000 US-born MENA, and then 6,000 or more foreign-born MENA. Those ancestries that were included were those located in the Middle East and North Africa, the specific countries, but then also looking at transnational groups that crossed borders, such as the Chaldean population. So here are some of our results. So these are selected characteristics. The purple is NHIS, and then the blue is the ACS there. So here you can see, using NHIS data, the foreign-born MENA children were slightly younger, not by a lot, but slightly younger than the foreign-born white children, but then slightly older than the US-born white children. There really wasn't a whole lot of difference in the gender distribution using NHIS data. However, when we looked at the federal income level, for the family income, foreign-born MENA children had higher rates of living in poverty than both foreign-born white and US-born white. Then when we looked at the ACS data, we found some similar results for age. The foreign-born MENA group was a little bit higher and very similar to the foreign-born white population. However, the US-born population was a little bit lower there. Same distribution for sex, almost half across the groups. However, we can see there was a big difference here in the poverty level. So using ACS data, 27.1% of US-born white children were living less than 200% of the federal poverty level, compared to 31.5% of foreign-born white children, 38.9% US-born MENA children, and then 67.6% of foreign-born MENA children.
2 minutes.
So then looking at our regression tables here, we compared foreign-born white and foreign-born MENA compared to US-born white after adjusting for age, sex, and income level. And you can see that our results were similar, but the odds were a little bit higher using ACS data. So compared to US-born white children, foreign-born MENA children had 1.5 times higher odds of not having health insurance. Then when looking at ACS data, there was no difference between US-born MENA children and US-born white children. However, foreign-born MENA children had 2.11 times higher odds of not having health insurance. Then when we compared foreign-born MENA to US-born MENA children, foreign-born MENA children had 2.11 times greater odds of not having health insurance compared to US-born children. So our study provided baseline estimates for uninsured MENA children using data from the only 2 nationally representative data sources where we can actually extract data on the MENA population. Foreign-born MENA children were more likely to be uninsured compared to US-born white children using NHIS data. Then we found foreign-born MENA children were more likely to be uninsured compared to both US-born MENA and US-born white children using the ACS data. And so the results really highlight the need for creating a separate racial and ethnic category for federal reporting standards so that these baseline health estimates for health insurance and many other health factors can be looked at among US and foreign-born MENA children. That's it.
Great. Thank you, Tiffany. All right, now we have Mickey McGlasson and Harry Hawkins. Mickey, if you'd like to begin your screen share, you can go ahead.
All right. Hi, everybody. I think you can see my screen, or I hope you can here in a second. My name is Mickey McGlasson, and I am presenting with Harry, my colleague. I'm going to talk a little bit, and then I'll throw it to Harry to walk us through a few maps, which we're going to look at here in a second. So we both work at an organization called the Create Lab at Carnegie Mellon University. The Create Lab is an applied technology lab that works with a variety of different types of technology, including robotics and physical tech, but also including data and data visualization. And data visualization specifically is what both of us spend a lot of our time doing, including through a platform that we're going to share with you here in a second called EarthTime. EarthTime is a web-based platform that our lab created to visualize data. Now, EarthTime was not originally created. I'm just going to go to the link. I think people can still see my screen here. You're welcome to look at the link or follow along on your own, www.earthtime.org. EarthTime is a platform that was originally created to visualize climate and land use data change over time based on satellite images, and there was a lot of sort of cutting edge technology that went into stitching together the images that we're all somewhat familiar with now in the context of, like, say, Google Maps or that sort of thing. But what EarthTime has been used to do is allow people to investigate with rich detail in terms of both geography and time how things have changed in a particular place. So here we have, for instance, the city of Las Vegas growing over time while Lake Mead shrinks. Just one of many, many different examples of very compelling data visualization that comes from geographic detail. We think that some of the same lessons that we've learned from doing that sort of work apply also to visualizing demographic data, including data through the ACS, because one of the things that we all here love about the ACS is that it's so richly detailed, statistically, geographically, and so forth. But when we go to visualize ACS data, many of us, myself included, often fall back on what become fairly predictable visualization tropes and typologies. And what we want to offer are some examples, or at least one quick example, of an alternative to that. I'm going to let Harry talk about that here in a second, but the key points we want to emphasize that we're talking about right here. One, people love maps, and that seems stupid or silly or simple, but it's true, and it's been reinforced every time we've tried to talk about data over a map in any sort of public context. And specifically, people love maps that they can explore, which is not all maps. Data can be both richly detailed and still intuitive and navigable. Often those are presented as trade-offs, and they don't have to be. And default visualization practices aren't always the right or good visualization practices. A couple of things also before I throw it to Harry that we're not trying to emphasize here. We're not saying you should just use this platform to visualize your data. You're welcome to. It's free. It's open source. You can use it. But we're not. That's not the message we're trying to convey here. I'm also not saying that you should never use Choroplus. There's a place and a time, no doubt about it. Let me, however, go ahead and jump into some examples of alternative data visualization of ACS data that we've done in EarthTime. And Harry, you can talk us through this part.
Is there a visualization? I'm seeing the PowerPoint.
Sorry, I guess you guys couldn't see my screen when I shifted windows. Sorry about that. I thought I was sharing my whole window. One sec. Hold on. You see EarthTime now?
Yes, we can.
Yes, we
Sorry.
can.
Okay, carry on.
Can you play the animation? So what we're looking at here is an EarthTime dot map. And this is one of the inherent things to the EarthTime platform. So we have a pipeline that basically takes census data and transforms it into a map where we, given a value for a certain block, randomize the location of the population in that block. So each dot isn't necessarily where someone lives or where someone physically is, more than it's just trying to capture the density of that area. But what these maps allow us to do, and what you can't necessarily always achieve with Choropleth, is you can start to see the mix within the population without having to, choose the maximum group in that area. You can see just how an area breaks down racially. And so here in this map, the green dots represent Black people, the blue dots represent the white population, red is Asian or Pacific Islander, purple, American Indian and Alaska Native, and then brown is other, two or more races, and then the orange color is Hispanic or Latino. And
Got
this is
1
based
minute.
on, thank you. And this is based on the ACS 2000, so it's, the timeline there is going through the ACS 2010, 2015, and then the ACS 2020. So you're seeing the 5 years. So this map is another population map showing housing tenure. So you can start to see, owner occupied versus renter occupied. And what we do is, we use these dot maps to essentially try to show this larger geographical pattern without compromising too much detail in that, and trying to get, a more accurate picture of just how the population, how different demographics of the population look when you try to visualize them together without compromise. So that's a big part of EarthTime, a big part of what we do. So yeah, throw it back to Nikki now. Close out.
Yeah, thanks. Sorry, I realized you guys were not actually seeing my screen when I thought you were earlier, but anyway, yeah, thanks, Harry. So our message here is really just that we think we've learned some lessons about visualizing data from a different context that actually apply pretty nicely to the sort of demographic data that we often visualize with ACS. And we'll message our emails if anybody wants to follow up.
Great. Thank you, Harry and Mickey. All right, next I'll welcome Zhali Zheng. Zhali, if you'd like to share your screen, you can go right ahead.
Okay, thank you. Where is it? Can you see the screen now?
We can, thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'm Jiali. I'm with the Department of Social Services, Metro Government of Nashville and Davidson County. So we mainly use ACS data to assess and address community needs. That means the community within Nashville City. For Metro Nashville, it's a metro city with a population of over 700,000 in 2021, according to ACS data. And the population below poverty level was over 100,000. It has a diverse race and ethnicity makeup. And despite its rapid development in recent years, poverty and gentrification are still big problems in Nashville. And I work with the Strategic Planning and Research Division of Department of Social Services. And we have a mission to research the economic mobility and social well-being of Nashvillians, to provide data and data-related support to other metro departments and our community partners, and to unite all the efforts across the Nashville city to serve the community. We have used the ACS one-year estimates extensively. For instance, we produce an annual community needs evaluation report. In this report, we provide an overview of the social service needs like the needs for food, for housing, transportation, senior care, etc. And the report identifies current trends in the community. For instance, the migration into the city and out of the city and the poverty trends in recent years. And also based on the trends and patterns, we anticipate the needs and service. So the reports help guide the policymakers, advocates, professional practitioners, and philanthropists in their efforts to alleviate poverty. In each year, when we release the community needs evaluation report, we would hold a big conference. So a lot of people from different parts of Nashville City would come to the conference to discuss about the problems in the report and also to discuss about the measures that we can take. The 2022 community needs evaluation focuses on the state of economic and social well-being of the seniors in Nashville City. Here are some sample tables and charts that the data that we extracted from the ACS data that we include in the reports. So the first table and charts is an example of the tables and charts we include as an appendix in the report. So we would also include other very important demographic data and also other data that people in our city would be interested in, here is the age and maybe also racial makeup, household income, housing status, etc. And the charts on the second chart on the left is an example of the chart that we include in the main body of the report. So it illustrates the trend of the senior population in Nashville over 12 years of time. The senior people below poverty level over 12 years. And the right table gives us detailed information about the housing status of the seniors in Nashville, like those who own a house, the percentage of people, a senior population who own a house, and those who rent, and their monthly cost for housing. We've also used ACS 5-year estimates. We also produce an annual report called Know Your Community Report. There are 35 council districts in Nashville City, and in this report, we provide the council district level information about the population, because only the 5-year estimate would provide information down to the district level. So this report helps the council members and also community partners who are interested in more detailed information about the statistics within the city and Davidson County. The information that we provide include like the number of children or seniors, disability status, poverty status, health insurance status, transportation needs, etc. Here are some sample charts and tables in the Know Your Community report. The left one illustrates the median rent by council districts. From green to yellow, it means from lower rent to higher rent. So you can see the lower rents concentrates in the northern part and the southeast parts of the city. If you also look at the demographic data of this council district, you can see that the green area, the North Nashville, are the areas where a lot of African Americans live, and the Southeast, a lot of Spanish-speaking population live. The right table, 2 minutes? Okay. The right table gives us detailed information about the monthly rent and also the rent as a percentage of the household income. It's also color-coded, so the higher value have a darker color. We've also helped our community partners a lot to provide them with the data that they need. For instance, in Nashville, we have the property tax relief program and property tax break program. So those eligible population include the senior and disabled household with annual income of less than $31,600. And this one for tax break program, the income is less than $40,500. Well, in the ACS data tables, we cannot find the numbers of these people. So we use the PALMS data to calculate the number of those people who are eligible for these programs to help the trustee's office to estimate the numbers and also to plan their budget. We also help help the private sectors who want to apply for the senior home grant in North Nashville. So we provided the number of people aged 62 and 65 and above by zip code and by council districts. A lot of demographic information was provided to support their grant application. And also we have our own research projects that may focus on a small population like single mothers with children. And for all those projects, ACS data have helped us a lot. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. As a reminder, any questions you have for the panelists, go ahead and put those into the Q&A. And with that, I will welcome Jim Zalweg. Jim, if you'd like to go ahead and share your screen.
Yes. And Sarah, does that show up?
It does, yes.
Thank you. So I'm Jim Zalweg. I'm a professor at the State University of New York campus at Brockport. I'm primarily a physical geographer. I'm an earth scientist. But what I'm sure all the whole audience and everybody at the meeting realizes is that the most important problems and the most important things are at the intersection of the physical world and the human world. So I really do appreciate the census data, American Community Survey data. So what is my title referring to? It's a long title. I will be using some building footprints. I'll introduce that data set in a moment or two. And the term that's key in this is non-aligning study areas. And the question might be at this point, what non-aligning to what? Well, I'm sure everyone is extremely familiar with the how data in American Community Survey is organized, collected, organized, distributed. It's by a certain defined set of geographies. Well, those geographies don't always match with what might be referred to as study areas, areas of interest, or as I saw in presentations in this meeting, locally relevant geographies, user-defined boundaries, non-aligning study areas, etc. So and a question might be asked. I'm not going to show any specific study, but rather a generic demonstration of what I'm trying to talk about here today. A question might come up, how many seniors? This would be census type data referring to a certain age, just the number of people of a certain age are in my study area, which may not be the same as a census block or tract or block group, etc. So I have an illustration here. This is Hamilton County, New York, in the Adirondacks, and the blue area is the Racket River watershed. And my subspecialty is watershed science. And the question always comes up, how many people live in my watershed? Well, that's a hard question to answer because what's shown here is block groups in Hamilton County and the population of older people within each of those block groups, just as an example. So the question might be then, how many older people or what is the population distribution in this study area? Well, hard to say. Because the study area, the watershed boundary, includes pieces, fragments of the blocks. How's this problem usually handled? Well, I was always taught, going way back, that the fallback method for answering a question, how many people live in my watershed, is through proportional allocation, which is generally done by area. And the fine print is a brief description, but basically we're all probably familiar with proportional allocation by area. You say, for instance, the dark green piece of the watershed is maybe 10% of the block group with 175 elderly people in it. So we'll say that 17 elderly people live in the dark green section. And we continue and add them all up. There is a very, very significant assumption in this, however, and that is that the population is evenly distributed across the area of each reporting block. And that is not necessarily true. We generally don't have uniform population distribution over area. It's just not the case. So after having seen this problem and tried to explain it to my watershed and geography students for many years, I stumbled upon this idea of using a building footprint data set to as an allocation means, a third data set, as one of our earlier speakers mentioned, that would help allocate the people, the 136, the 175, et cetera, allocate them into the fragments created by overlaying my study area with census geographies. Building footprints are actually a pretty universal and widely available data set right now. And in the super small font, it mentions that one standard data set of building footprints has 125 million plus features in it across the country. There's many sources for these: web mapping services, web feature services, many downloads. There's actually enhanced building footprint data sets as well that actually have attributes attached to the building footprints. They're not just polygons. And what's shown on the right-hand side is the building footprints, and they're exaggerated. I've made the boundaries really thick so that they show up, but it does show the distribution of building footprints across Hamilton County, New York, which shows that certainly the population, or at least the people, and we assume people all live in houses, so that there's a very strong correlation between buildings and people. The people who all live, the people are not evenly distributed in each of these census geographies. So I can go ahead and modify this little procedure, the little algorithm in the picture, to instead allocate proportionally the attributes of the attributes that I can get from ACS data, allocate them to the pieces which are shown in colors here by the number of building footprints, or the proportion of building footprints that fall in the fragment, rather than the area of the fragment divided by the total area. So I don't have time or proof to show that a specific example, nor time to show it, that shows this works. But clearly, I have to go back up one. Clearly, the population is not evenly distributed, so a better means of allocating might be necessary. Now, the slide I'm showing now just shows another example, a clearer one, which I think I can do in a minute. And on the right-hand side, it shows major wildfires over the past 20 years. And then on the right-hand side, zooms in and shows a 5,000-meter buffer around each of the major wildfires. And the problem solved here is that we can calculate, using this proportional allocation, the expected number of seniors within the vicinity of major wildfires. And clearly not every fire is likely to affect the same number of seniors, who may be a vulnerable population and may need to is something we would like to know, the number of vulnerable people, which could govern our response to wildfires and natural hazards is one of my principal studies. And I want to say thank you. I think my timing was okay. I want to say thank you. And the left on this, on the right is my email. Above that is Racket Lake, where I hope to spend some time. And then on the left is an illustration of my idea about creating a QGIS plugin or maybe an ArcGIS add-in that could if I feel like after doing this, it's worthwhile to begin to investigate developing a tool that would help people to do proportional allocation, maybe in a more accurate or more effective manner. I think that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. All right. And our last presenter is Diana Lavery. Diana, if you're ready, you can go ahead and share your screen.
All right. Are you able to confirm that I'm sharing all right?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you. All right. Well, many people view one statistic in the ACS and they view the margin of error with it. And they think, oh my gosh, I don't like what I'm seeing, or for whatever reason, it just erroneously makes them discount the whole ACS, which is a real shame. We have developed this app that allows you to coarsen up by tract. We learned about coarsening yesterday during the plenary in terms of groups, so age groups or educational groups, language groups. The ACS also coarsens by year in order to give us those 5-year estimates that go down to the tract. But let me show you an example here of, we'll go to occupied housing units. Here we go. And we'll zoom in to Long Beach, California. You'll notice that since this is a count or an integer, it's going to be symbolized by size here. And we can explore these tracts one by one on their own. These are tract centroids. And we see, okay, this one tract has 562 occupied housing units and a margin of error of 114, gives us a coefficient of variation of 12.3. And we want to bring that down a little bit. So instead of selecting one feature, I can actually combine this and design my super tracts essentially. And now I'm combining it with two, just the one tract next to it. I get a much lower coefficient here of 4.5, putting it in what we kind of think of as a high reliability group. These are very fuzzy, which I'll get to in a minute. But essentially this new group of two tracts has 2,828 occupied housing units and a much lower proportional margin of error. So I want to first show you that this is coming from ArcGIS Living Atlas American Community Survey layers that are in Living Atlas. So there's just a whole bunch of topics covered, tables covered, things like that. Let's see how this works for smaller populations. So instead of Long Beach, California, let me go to Billings, Montana, and say we're interested in veteran populations. Here we go, we'll use this layer. And then the fields, hold on. Okay. All right, something has frozen here. Let me stop sharing for a minute and go to my slides. Give me a sec.
Is it not allowing you to share again, Diana?
It just doesn't have my slides as an option. Let me try my entire screen.
All right. Still not working.
Yeah, it's not even allowing me to press the share button. It's like disabled.
All right, just one moment.
No problem. Let me talk about it. Essentially, what it is that we have a few best practices. Thank you so much, Mark.
Thank you,
amazing. All right, just I think 2 or 3 slides in.
All right, we've got about 2 minutes for you, Diana.
Okay, no problem. All right, next slide after this is the one. So here, a percentage, it would be symbolized by color rather than size. And if you don't want to use a ring to draw, you can use the draw polygon or draw neighborhood tool. And here we show that just aggregating 3 tracks gives us a more reliable estimate for the percent of adults who are veterans in this area called Billings Heights. Let's go to the next slide. All right, just a few best practices when using this app. Don't try to use this app to aggregate up to something that Census already has data on. So school districts, legislative districts, that kind of thing. Use the official estimate that's available. This is really for the custom geographies or user-defined polygons, as was discussed right before here. And when possible, try to preserve the patterns in the map. In that Billings Heights example, they were all pretty dark red, meaning higher populations of veterans for those track centroids. If possible, try to combine those patterns. And then tracks with 0 estimates. We've made them really small and really transparent for you. So here in the Long Beach Airport, you'll see adding them to your polygon can add error without adding any estimate to it since it's 0. So just something to be aware of. And next slide. Here, this is what we use in the gauge, but again, the coefficient is available to you. So you are free to determine whether or not that CV works for your needs. These are just the standard ranges that Esri uses in a lot of their work. But again, this allows you to show how combining tracks will resolve a lot of the MOE concerns. And oftentimes it's a very small number of tracks. So thank you very much. Yes, we have a blog and minute video about this too for further information.
Thank you, Diana. And I see that you have a link there if you'd like. I've noticed we've got some links being shared in the general chat. If you'd like to share those with participants, you can go ahead. All right. Thank you, all our speakers. If you'd like to all come back on screen, we're going to go ahead and open the floor for questions. We've got a few questions in the Q&A. If you have any questions, participants, that you have not entered in the Q&A that you'd like to have answered, please go ahead and do so now. But we'll go ahead and jump right in. So our first question is for Eric. Eric, when you looked at German, did you look at exclusively traditional German, Or did you include broader census Germanic groups such as Yiddish and Amish Dutch?
So we looked at traditional German. So if you can actually find all these estimates on our 5-year estimate on data.census.gov. I'll include the link in the chat. And so Yiddish and Pennsylvania Dutch, they are considered, in other West Germanic languages, and so they're categorized differently in our new 42 languages and language categories. So we did just traditional German. Thank you for that question.
Great, thank you. All right, and we did have a request. It looks like Kingia has responded with the report for Indigenous Peoples' Health that Aldo was presenting on. So please, everyone, take note that the link to that report is in both the Q&A and also linked in the general chat. So you can learn a little bit more about that. Apologies for the sound issues. Hopefully you'll all access that report and learn more about the topic. Next, Jim, how did you distinguish between residential and non-residential buildings?
Here's my microphone. Well, as I think I said, generally the several years ago data sets were just polygons, but more and more of the versions are do have attributes attached to them, where you can where they indicate whether it's residential or non-residential and what type of building. Another thing is also you can actually perhaps bring in a fourth data set, and that would be zoning as well, or some sort of parcel database as well to kind of refine. And in fact, that's where a lot of the attributes for the newest attribute included building footprints come from, where they take information from a parcel database and attach it to the building footprints database. So that gets a little more sophisticated. And I'm glad that question came up. That's like a step up in sophistication beyond the 7 minutes. But yes, there are ways to distinguish, and thank you for that.
Great. The next question is also for you, Jim. Can you provide additional links to learn more about proportional allocation and how to support the request for plugins?
Well, that's good. I'm glad somebody answered. Oh, am I on? I'm on. Thank you. I appreciate that. My email should be, is everybody's email available to all the viewers here, or should I put it in the chat? Or so I can answer that in the chat and communicate with everybody by email. That's kind of a big or broad question that, but I'd be very happy to talk to anybody who has an interest in this. And my email is jzollig@Brockport. And that may show up in the chat. But anybody who has really wants to talk about it or wants to discuss how a plugin might be constructed, I'd be glad to. Got a nice summer ahead of me to do a few things like that. Thanks.
Great. Thank you, Jim. All right. Next question is for Diana. Diana, what is the app that you were using called, if you could remind all of our attendees, and is it available to the public?
Yes, it's called our Margin of Error Summarization app, and it is available to the public. I can also link to it directly.
That would be great. Yeah, if you want to put a link in the chat, I'm sure many people would appreciate that.
Sure.
All right. And our next question, Diana, it looks like you answered it a bit in the Q&A section, but if you'd like to talk about it, when aggregating MOEs using the traditional, the rule of thumb is no more than 4 geographies. Otherwise, the MOE becomes less and less accurate. How is Esri working around this? Are they using a different formula?
Yes, that's a really good question. We are not using any different formula. It's the MOE approximation formula, and that's why I said if there is an official estimate that you'd rather have, absolutely use that one. But we did find that for a lot of the percentages or counts that were smaller for maybe some age groups or some renter versus owner type counts, that it really wasn't that many tracks. 4, I think, is a good cutoff. Like you saw that veterans percentage, we got there with 3. The other thing that the blog details is that just because your aggregation works for the 17 to 2021 5-year ACS, it might not hold across all years. So we did find a few differences when we were looking at the 2016 to 20, and then when all the layers in Living Atlas got refreshed for 17 to 2021, some of our examples had changed slightly, but it was, like I said, usually right around 3 or 4 tracks to aggregate. Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Diana. All right, the next question is for Tiffany. Tiffany, can you expand on the availability of data on MENA populations broadly beyond children's health? What's available in the ACS, and why do you believe this data is not more prevalent based on your findings?
Yeah, so thank you for that question. So the MENA population, so far really as a national data source, we've really only been able to use that NHIS and the ACS, which I looked at today. Within the ACS, though, because of the purpose of the survey not being specific to health, the health information that's collected is very limited and more focused on those social determinants of health. And so things like the housing. I was just looking at the survey. There's health insurance. I don't think there was a specific question on access to care, but there are some questions about difficulty. So like any sort of disability limitations, and we've looked at that. As far as why it's not prevalent based on these findings, I think part of it is just the fact that there's been a huge sort of push actually since these categories haven't been changed since 1997. And so even in 1997, the Arab American population and MENA population were trying to get a separate category for it. And so it's just been this over time, not being able to do it. But I'm very hopeful that there will be a category.
Great. And I've received another question for Diana. Diana, many data users combine block groups to create custom geographies. Although your tool focuses on tracks, could it potentially be extended to focus on block groups as well?
Yes, that is a great question too. We started with tracks since we really wanted to get a proof of concept first, but we are thinking about what it would look like to do this for block groups as well. Currently, the Living Atlas layers that some of you might be familiar with only go to tracked at the moment. And again, thinking through if and when and how we might add block groups as well. But when that happens, then this app would totally absorb whatever's in those Living Atlas layers. Yes.
Great, thank you. All right, that's all of our questions. I'd like to again thank all of our speakers for sharing the work that you're doing. All of you had amazing tools and resources and information to share on really important work, so we really appreciate you. And thank you to all of the attendees for joining us as well. You'll notice that our speakers have provided a lot of really helpful links to some of the tools and resources that they spoke about today. Those are in the general chat, so before you sign off, go ahead and pull those links so that you can reference them. And we've got a last minute question for Mickey and Harry. Is there an option to watch or review the temporal data story before 2010?
That one story we just animate over the ACS data that starts in the 2010 or really 2006 to 2010 5-year estimates, but there are other examples on EarthTime of animations that go back farther, and we've done animations with decennial data that capture like 1990, 2000, 2010, 2020. So other examples, yes, on EarthTime. Thanks.
Thank you. Well, again, Thank you all so much, speakers, for joining us and sharing your work. Thank you, participants, for attending and for some really great questions. Again, pull those links out of the live chat. There's really great resources there, and have a great rest of your day.
Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.